Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're at. Hey, it's Will, the Bowtie Sober Guy, coming at you with my podcast, Bowtie Breakthroughs. Excited to be here, and we're going to be talking about renewing your mind today, which I'm really, really excited about. And I wanted to share, for those of you that are joining me live, you'll actually be able to see. If you watch this later, you're going to be able to see. For those of you that are just listening to it as the podcast later on, you're not going to be able to see. But I'm in my office. I'm actually back at home. I'm in my office, and you can see some of the things that are of interest to me, which is kind of fun. So one of the funny things is Mickey Mouse right here. Mickey Mouse, I will share this just because, again, you guys are seeing this going, what is all that stuff back there? It's a bunch of books. We also see Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is one of my heroes. I have two heroes. Both of them are fictional characters, which is interesting in itself. But Mickey Mouse, because he never grows old and he always has fun. And that's how I want to live. That's just how I want to live. I actually have a tattoo of Mickey Mouse on my right ankle, as a matter of fact. You'll also see over my, my right shoulder, or my right shoulder here, my medals from when I did marathons before. And I've shared with some of you, or may have heard me, that I'm training for another marathon in July. So I'm excited about that. And of course, above my head, I've got my bow tie license plate from when I was in Colorado. So that's just some of the stuff that you see there, a little bit more about me, but let's move on to what we're going to talk about today. And that's renewing your mind. And this to me is probably the one thing that if I were to say, why is my life different today from what it was before? And why is it that I live the way I do today? Why is it I do the things in my business the way I do? Well, how do I help people? All of that. And it truly comes down to renewing my mind. And it really is, there's all kinds of science to it. And we're not going to dive into that, but we're going to talk about some different things today about how do I change that? How do I renew my mind and what's going on in my head? If you're anything like me, you probably experience multiple things happening multiple times throughout all days and every day. And so I live that way as well. I was diagnosed years ago with ADHD, but it was funny. The psychiatrist that actually diagnosed me, he said, well, you know what? He goes, you make it work. He goes, you just, in the line of work you were in at the time, but also how you live and how you respond and all those things, you make it work. And so I'm lucky in that respect. Not everyone is, and I can appreciate that. But we have all these different things going on. And for many, many years, decades, and quite honestly, most of my life, I really struggled with those negative thoughts, those negative beliefs, those negative ways of living and way of looking at the world. And I always joke that I was a glass 3/4 full kind of guy, but that was all on the outside. And we're going to talk about masks here in a little bit. But really on the inside, I was dead, and I had these horrible thoughts. And as I've shared with you, I'll share a little bit more of my story here in a minute. But, at one point in my life, I literally ended up checking myself into the hospital and going into a psych ward because I was going to take my own life. And I don't share that out of pride or anything like that. I just know what it's like to be in that place. And I was truly scared. But how do I go from that, right? And having all that stuff going on in my head to where I am today. And I still have a lot of stuff that happens in my head. There's no doubt. I can walk into a room, forget what I was walking in there for, turn around, remember what it is, walk back into the room and forget again. And it's just crazy. It just happened earlier to me. I walked outside. I was like, oh, I came outside for something. Couldn't remember what it was because I had moved on and clicked to 3 other things in that small amount of time. So I get it. But the good news for me today is a lot of the, although I have those multiple thoughts and those kinds of things, a lot of the negative limiting beliefs and thoughts that I had for most of my life, I've really transformed a lot of those into a positive mindset and renewed my mind, so to speak. And it takes work, it takes time, but there's physical science around it. Scientists have shown that we have these grooves, these highways in our brains, literally physical grooves, neural pathways that electrical impulses go down. And we can change those though, with this new way of thinking and this new way of doing. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we do, I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. I'm going to ask them to you and think about these questions. Are you where you want to be in your life, in your relationships, in your business, in your profession, in your finances, in your health, in your wellness? Are you where you would like to be in those areas? Are there other things that you would like to accomplish? Do you have a bucket list? Do you have things that you've always wanted to do that have maybe been put on the back burner, or you've told yourself, I just can't do it for whatever reason? I shared with you, I mean, I'm getting ready to, I'm training for a marathon, right? Get another medal to put up there. And it's been 19 years since I did my last marathon. I'm much older and I'm a very different person. My body's much older, but I still want to do that. So are you happy with those current results that you're seeing in those relationships, in your finances, in your life, in your business, in your profession? And here's the big question for you. If you knew that, and you've heard this before when it comes to like goal setting, and this isn't a goal setting podcast today, but if you could achieve that one thing in life and you knew nothing could stop you, what would it be? And if you're watching live and you want to share, I'd love to see it in the comments. I think I can see them here. But I would love to see those. If you knew nothing could stop you, what would you like to do? What would you like to accomplish? And again, it doesn't have to be in a business sense, a financial sense. Maybe it's a relationship. You're looking for a certain thing in a relationship. Maybe you're looking for something in your health and your wellness. Really stop and think, what would I do if nothing was stopping me? Take all of the naysayers out of it, whether it's yourself or anyone else in your life. Take them out of the equation. What would it be? And I want you, even though you might not put it in the comments, but if you're thinking about it, make a mental note. If you can't write it down, if you're somewhere that you can write it down, I want you to write it down. Because I believe that those are the things that really when we start working on achieving those, will change our lives. So that's one of the things right there, is we have to know what that is, right? Which takes me to really this first step. And I've shared some of this on my other podcasts and some of the other things I do, but really one of the big things is having an awareness. Do we know what it is that we want to accomplish? Do we know where it is that we want to go? Do we have an idea, or have we let all these thoughts and all these beliefs and all these things, the world and people and all that, have we allowed them to come in and take space in our brain and tell us that we can't do it? Do we also have this awareness that I think I can? I think there is a way. And there are certain things that I could never do. Like I probably never could fly to the moon, but you know what? There's a chance if I had enough money, I could actually go to outer space. Thank you, Elon Musk. Right? So I might not get to the moon, but I get closer than I am now. So are there those things? And having that awareness of what it is that you want, and then maybe even what is that awareness of the things, the people, the circumstances, the situations, whatever it is, having an awareness of what is keeping you from getting there. Because to me, that is the very first step in achieving any level of success in anything, any area of life that you want, life or business, is really having that conscious awareness of what it is. That is truly the first step. Because what happens is when we have that awareness of where we're at and where we want to go, we can see the gap, right? We can see that gap. And I believe when we start to being able to see that gap, we can start closing that gap, and we can start taking the necessary action to be able to get that. And one of the things that I think awareness creates, and this is going into my book that I'm currently writing, is what I call aha moments. An aha moment stands for awareness heightens awareness. Because when I live in a heightened state of awareness, I'm aware of what's going on. I'm aware of the thoughts that I have going on in my head. I'm aware of the actions that I'm taking. I'm aware of the circumstances and the situations and those things that are going on in my life. And when I become more aware, it helps heighten more awareness. And now I continue to become more and more and more aware. And to me, that's really when it gets exciting, because now all of a sudden I start seeing things that are hindering me or things that are holding me back. But I also start seeing, and this is really cool, new aha moments or new moments of opportunities, right? That are popping up that maybe I didn't see because I was not aware before. I forget what it's called, but there's something that's called where, you decide you're going to buy a new car, you're going to buy a red Audi Q7, right? And so you decide, and all of a sudden you see all the red Audi Q7s on the road. And you think there's more red Audi Q7s on the road. But the truth is you're just aware of them. So that's why awareness is so key. And awareness will create more awareness. So really start looking at, now that you can be aware, what are the things? You've got this goal, this big thing that you want to change, that you want to get to. And maybe it's just a way of thinking. Maybe it's that you're kind of that glass half full kind of thinker, but you want to change to a glass full type thinker. Or maybe you want to take your business to the next level, whether it's 5 to 6 figures, 6 to 7 figures, or maybe it's a startup and you just want to get it going. Maybe you'd want to turn that side hustle into a main hustle, turn that passion into profit. So now with that heightened awareness, you can start seeing what is keeping you from achieving that you want to reach. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. Our outside results, the things that are happening in our life today, the results that we're getting in all these different areas of our life are a direct reflection of what's going on inside. Let me restate that. So our external results, the things that we're getting, are usually a direct reflection of the insides. And so we have to change that. We have to change our beliefs. We have to change the way we think about things. We have to change the way we look at the world. And, again, I've shared some of this on my podcast. And if you follow me on all my socials, you'll actually see me talk about this. But 2017 was a pivotal year in my life. I mean, it was crazy. It's the year I got sober. I didn't get sober. I got sober a couple different times back, but I've been sober since November 15th of 2017. But it didn't start that way, right? And I got sober only to relapse, only to have my emotional bottom, where I spent, like I had said, the 4 days in the psych hole, where they took away all my shoelaces and belts and all the other phones and everything else, right? Because I was going to take my own life, to having a near-death experience after getting sober, and then relapsing because of that on some pain pills, and then getting sober again only to relapse. And so I've been there. But the things that I've learned and has improved my awareness. And I was able to start seeing my life in a very different way. And it all started with my beliefs. And I believe that we have this, no pun intended, but we have this, what I call the pattern of results. Okay, so think of a circle. And at the circle, at the very top of the circle, it starts with our beliefs. And our beliefs, many of them, are ingrained in us in a very young age, where we didn't even have a choice. Those beliefs then create thoughts, which then create feelings, which then turn into actions, which create our results. So what we have to start doing is looking at those beliefs. And I work a lot with a lot of people on this, as how do we change those? Because here's what happens is those beliefs really turn into our thoughts and our feelings, then our actions and our results. So we have to start looking at, how do we change those? And here's what's interesting about our thinking and our thoughts. Many of you probably heard that, we have tens of thousands of thoughts every day. And there's been different studies that show different things when it comes to our thoughts. And are they true thoughts? Or are they just fleeting little things here? How many of our subconscious? How many are conscious? Like, we don't have to think about breathing, right? We don't have to think about our heart beating. It just happens, right? But there's tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. And there's been study after study that show that, right? So how do we capture those to actually change those? Because there's all kinds of quotes out there that you've seen, also probably heard. If you haven't, look them up. We become what we think about. Many of you have probably heard that, right? And so our beliefs are what direct that thinking. For most of my life, until I got sober, I started doing a lot of this work and really working on myself. I thought of myself as trash. Like, that was the word I used. And I won't go into the reasons why, and I could still go there. I could still have these negative feelings that will pop up in certain situations, and I call them my trauma responses, right? Because something will happen And all of a sudden it elicits this feeling inside me, this emotion that I don't like. And all of a sudden I go back to that place. But because I've done all this work and I have this awareness and I do the things that I do, I also know that that's not the truth anymore and can get myself out of that. And I call it the pit because it's truly the pit, out of it much sooner. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It still can happen. So our beliefs are going to direct our thinking. And so one of the things I encourage you to do, and you can start doing this, one is you've already started the aha moments, right? You're going to increase your awareness. The next thing is start a thought catalog. And this is really an interesting thing to do. And I learned this through something else that I was studying when I was looking at some time management courses years ago, which is another thing we can talk about. You can't manage time. You can only manage activity. But take and have this thought catalog. And really all it is somewhere and probably multiple places that you can capture your thoughts. Whether it's daydream, whether it's negative thoughts, whether it's a positive thought, where all of a sudden you can start capturing the way you talk to yourself, right? You may not even say it out loud, but it comes into your head. And start capturing those. There's a couple different ways you can do it. Keep little notebooks all around the house. I would have some sort of a private notebook maybe on your phone so that when you're out and about and something, pops into your head, you're like, ooh, I want to capture that. Because all of a sudden, again, this goes back to awareness. We can start seeing these different things. We can start seeing the patterns of our thoughts, which come from our beliefs, that we can then start changing them. Because as I had mentioned, our beliefs really guide all of this. And many of them were ingrained in us before we even had a choice on whether or not we wanted them or not, right? They were just ingrained by our upbringing and not maliciously typically. It was just the way we were raised, the situations, the circumstances, all those things that we went through. They were put into our lives. And even today, we still have those experiences that can change our beliefs. But we're going to talk about that here shortly. But how do we change those? Because they can be real or imagined. We can have real beliefs, but we could also have and I had a lot of imagined beliefs, things that are not true, things that I believed, but are not true, right? They can also be empowering or limiting. Many times I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I didn't have as many empowering beliefs. But I've grown and been able to encourage myself to have more empowering beliefs. And then I surround myself with others that can also help me see those things, whether it's in small groups, whether it's in friends, wherever it might be, surrounding myself with those people that are also helping me with that. So the thing about these beliefs is that's really can dictate who we are. And not only that, the results we have. So we can choose, because I believe that beliefs are choices. We can choose to hang on to this belief, or we can choose to let go of this belief and replace it with an empowering belief. And that's what's really, really exciting. You're like, well, Will, but wait a minute. You've done the work. That's fine. You could do it. How can I do that? How do I change these beliefs? Because again, it all starts with the beliefs. When you're looking at the circle, beliefs cause our thinking, which cause our emotions and our feelings, which cause our action, which causes our results. So how do we change that? Is it really that simple? And I want to say it's a simple process, but it's not easy. It's a lot of work and it takes time, it takes commitment, and it takes energy. And we have to have the want to change that. It's just like when I got sober. I tried for 5.5 years to get sober before I got sober this last time. 5.5 years. 5.5 years I tried to get sober. And I call that my checkbox sobriety years, because I was literally just checking a box. I was trying to go to meetings. I was trying to do the recovery work. I was trying to work with sponsors and accountability partners. I was trying to do all these different things. But for me, all I was doing it in my head, through the cerebral, right? I didn't have it in my heart because I didn't really want to quit drinking, if I'm honest, which I am. I didn't really want to quit because I loved it. But today, I don't. I love the life that I have today, and I don't have to have that. But it takes work. And the thing that I want you to think about when it comes to that is, do you have the how? And the how stands for, are you willing to be honest? Are you willing to be open? And are you willing? Honest, open, and willing. Because in order to change, we have to have those things before we can move forward. We have to know that I can be honest with myself. I have to be open. And through the work that I do with others, I have a 6-step blueprint that actually takes people through that. The O in bow tie, it's an acrostic, stands as, if you go back and listen to my 2 podcasts and I go through what the acrostic is, but the O is open. Are we open to making that change? Because here's the thing. Albert Einstein had a great quote that I just love this quote. And he said, you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Do you hear that? You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Wow. So I have to change this. Pointing at his mind. Yes, I was, for those of you just listening. I have to change my mind and have a different mind to solve the problems that I created with my current mind. And so that means growth, right? We have to change. We have to grow. We have to learn different strategies. We have to learn different ways of thinking. We have to learn these different ways. So there's 2 different ways when it comes to changing your beliefs. Let's really get to the rubber, where the rubber meets the road. There's 2 different ways that we can change our beliefs. One is through a traumatic experience. So I'll give you an example. PTSD is an example of that, where people have had traumatic experiences and it changes. It literally physically can change your brain because of those physical or those traumatic experiences. I had one with my injury. It was a fall. I was on a roof of a home. I slipped. I ended up slicing my wrist to the bone. I was bleeding out. I cut both arteries. But it was a very traumatic experience, right? And it was a near-death experience because I was literally bleeding out. But interesting thing that happened with that, and I had to do work afterwards, was I had this fear of falling. And it wasn't found in anything except that I had an accident that was pretty significant. And so now all of a sudden, and I was living in Denver at the time, and winter came, and I'd be walking on ice, and I had this horrible fear of falling. And I had to do some work, and I got different therapy on it, and I'm okay now. I've actually gotten on roofs even since then. So I'm able to overcome that. But here's the other way, and this is what's really where it gets really exciting in changing our beliefs, guys, is we have the ability to change our beliefs through repetition and our imagination. Because it's been proven again that our mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. That's why our beliefs that are imagined have so much power, because our mind doesn't know any different. There was actually a study done, and I want to read this, at CU, a brain study, where I'm going to quote them. They said, imagination is a neurological reality that can impact our brains and bodies in ways that matter for our well-being. And that was the director of the lab at CU Boulder that did this. So imagination is a neurological reality that can impact our brains and bodies. So we can use imagination to change our brains. We can use repetition to renew our minds and start thinking about different things. So what does that mean? What does repetition mean? So, well, repetition, there's a great saying out there. You've heard practice makes perfect. Not a big fan of that. But what practice does is it makes permanent. Talk to any professional athlete. You may have heard of the book, The 10,000 Hour Rule. Or I don't even know if it's a book. I think it was a book. But Malcolm Gladwell might have done that. But the 10,000 hours. Any professional athlete, anybody that is an expert at something will tell you you've got to practice. And practice and practice and practice and practice, because practice makes permanent. That's why athletes have what's called muscle memory. Even when I started training again late last year and early this year for my marathon, I had some muscle memory because I had ran some and walked a bunch since my last marathon 19 years ago. But I'd still had some of that muscle memory. And I can feel it when I'm out training right now, and I get to this point where I was at the peak of my training back then. And occasionally I'll get that now. It'll happen again over time, but I can feel that. I can feel the groove. I can feel, oh my gosh, I am going at the right pace, and my muscles just feel fluid. So unfortunately, my cardiovascular is not quite there yet to be able to run as fast as I did back then. But Repetition and that practice makes the permanent. Here's the other thing about our mind is we think in pictures. A great majority of us think in pictures. And 60 to 70% is a rough estimate on what they say. People think in pictures. So we have the ability to take these pictures and turn them into reality in our minds, and it doesn't know any different. And I actually have, my coach is going to be proud of me because I have a notebook. I have a notebook here where, again, those of you that are just listening, you can't see it, but I have a notebook that I write all the things that I want to accomplish. And I write and I write and I write and I free write. What does it look like? What does it look like? And it's kind of the future you, the future will, right? And I'm writing all these different things. So if I have an event coming up, I'll write and I'll write and I'll write and I'll write and I'll picture it in my head. I've even gone so far as to take and record what I wrote and listen to it when I'm training so that I hear that, right? I hear the repetition over and over and over, because what happens is our mind takes this repetition and our imagination and thinks it's real. And all of a sudden, we're going to start seeing opportunities that probably were already there, but we just didn't see them because we weren't open to them. And so we use our imagination. We create the business that we want. We use our imagination. We create the relationships that we want. We use our imagination. We create the financial well-being that we want in our lives, and we use our imagination. Because what happens is we truly are creating our new reality by using our imagination today. I have one of my favorite sayings that I have is, let's see if I can find it here, because I love it. It's about taking today, create a new tomorrow by untangling yesterday into a new today. And so we have the ability to create our own future just by using our imaginations and repetition. But it's not just enough to do those things. You want to make sure, as I had mentioned before, you want to make sure that you're in the right state of being when you do these things. Because as I had mentioned, we have limiting beliefs and we have limiting states, and we have empowering beliefs and we have empowering states. And so what really can start to hit this home is literally take those journals, take those writings, take those thoughts, and get into a heightened state of empowerment where you really feel good about what's going on in your life. And it could be anything. It could be before a run, after a run, before working out. Maybe it's before, after you've just hung out with your kids or you've had dinner, whatever it is that gets you in this really great state. And then all of a sudden you go through this exercise of repeating what it is that you want to achieve. And you can do this in all areas of your life. And so we repeat in an empowering state. And so what do we want to do? We want to practice, because practice makes permanent. So again, these are the things you want to do. We have these thoughts. We have these beliefs come from our beliefs, and we want to change them. We have to understand that we have the ability and we have the power through our imagination to turn these things into reality. I'll go back and share again real quick about when I got sober. I was a drinker. I drink all day, every day. I had to change that. And now my mind reacts differently than a normal person does to alcohol. And I know that. And again, scientifically proven, blah, 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 all that. But I also know that I had an obsession and I wanted it. I had to have it. But now today I can go and hang out with people. And this is my story. I don't know if it is yours. And I'm not telling you to do this if you're in recovery. But I can go and hang out with people that are drinking and be okay with it. But it wasn't like that. I could not drink. It was literally against my will. But I was able to change those neural pathways by teaching myself to think differently and using repetition and seeing myself differently over and over and over and writing over and over and over to where now today. Now, I know I only have today, and right now I'm not going to go drink, but that's the other thing I don't tell myself, and anybody in recovery should tell you that, is I only have today. I don't know. Something could happen tomorrow. It could happen later tonight. I don't know. Right now is all I have, and I don't have any desire or any inclination to pick up a bottle. But again, it wasn't always like that. 7 years ago, it wasn't like that at all. Like I could not wake up without picking up a bottle. It's just crazy. But I was able to change that through these very same things that I'm talking about today. But it takes time, and you've got to be committed to it. And that's where the awareness comes in. You've got to understand it and know what it is you want to change to. And so how do you sustain those results? Well, the biggest thing is always keeping that state of awareness, right? I have to do that. I have to be aware of what's going on. I have to be aware of the thoughts that are going on. And I have to take personal responsibility. I think this is a big thing that I learned years ago. I had a boss who talked to me about personal responsibility. It was one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life, and I remember it very vividly. But we have to take personal responsibility and know that our current results, no matter our circumstances, and I know some of you may be in really crappy circumstances, but our current results are a direct response or a direct reflection of our choices. Remember that. It's still our choices. Well, I don't have any choices. Well, I'm stuck here. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. I encourage you, if you're in that place, to really think about it. There's a step in my steps that I do with people, and it's about taking personal responsibility for the results, because I had a part in almost all things that happened to me. And maybe I didn't have a part in the circumstance or the situation that I was in, but what I did have a part in, and I had to take personal responsibility, is how I reacted and responded to that situation. We all have that. We have to take personal responsibility for how we react and respond to the situations and circumstances that we're in. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really, really difficult. And I get it. My life isn't perfect. I share that with you guys all the time. My life is not perfect. It's far from perfect. But you know what? I can still find joy in that struggle. So we're going to take personal responsibility. We're going to be aware of our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our results. And then we're going to make a decision. We're going to take and make a choice today to change. Because when you make that choice and then you decide you want to take the action, your life starts to look different. And that's what I love doing. I love working with people when it comes to that kind of thing, to see those light bulbs go off, to see that change. Years ago, when I used to coach the marathon running, it was amazing to see people who, couldn't walk to the mailbox, all of a sudden complete 26.2 miles in 5 to 6 months. Pretty amazing stuff. And that's where I come in and help people. Because with a coach, of course, you can help. You've got accountability. You've got clarity, you've got feedback, you've got all these things and support that will actually guide you to those goals. But it all starts with you. You've got to make that choice. You've got to then say, I want something different. This is what it is. And then we take action. And we take more and more and more action. And if you're interested in going through the steps with me, the 6 steps of the Bowtie Blueprint, please reach out. I'm happy to go through those with you. I've got a program designed and a workbook that will change your life. But maybe you're not ready, and that's okay too. Please continue to follow me. I'll be sharing more and more and more. I'm so excited that you guys joined me today for my Bowtie Breakthrough and renewing your mind. You can do this. It's time. It's time to stop allowing outside circumstances, outside situations to keep you, yes, I mean you, from reaching your goals, reaching your dreams, creating success in all areas of your life, unlike anything that you maybe ever imagined. It's time for you. Thank you, everyone. It's Will the Bowtie Sober Guy. Peace out.